Welcome into a special free agency bonus episode of Stone Cold Stros. I'm Brandon Strange with Charlie Polillo and Josh Jordan. Follow them on X at Polillo and at Josh Jordan 975 and read their work on sportsmap.com. On today's episode, it's the start of free agency, so Bregman Watch officially begins. How the World Series results impact the AL competitive landscape. A former MLB GM makes some surprising predictions about Houston's free agent moves. Some Astros season awards in the mix and how that impacts the front office aggressiveness this offseason. And we're also waiting to hear from Yankees GM Brian Cashman to spin how New York's World Series implosion is the Astros' fault. Before we get started, click like on the video, please, if you want to see more offseason content. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. We know there are still a bunch of you out there who haven't subbed, and we are so close to that 25,000 subscriber mark, so we want you to help us out there. And if you have subbed, be sure to click the bell for notifications so you know as soon as new bonus content drops, especially this offseason, because YouTube's offseason algorithm is very unkind. And if you're on the go, we're on all your favorite podcast apps like Apple and Spotify. Gents, since this is our first episode since the conclusion of the World Series, I wanted to highlight something that came out from Joel Sherman following the conclusion of the series, and that was the Dodgers scouting report on the Yankees. In his report in the New York Post, Sherman writes, "What the Dodgers told their players in scouting meetings was the Yankees were talent over fundamentals, that if you run the bases with purpose and aggression, the Yankees would self-inflict harm. They mentioned the Yankees were the major's worst base running team by every metric, and, quote, their metrics had the Yankees as the worst positioned outfield." So taking that scouting report into consideration, of the AL's representative in the World Series and combining it with New York's uncertainty and bringing back Juan Soto, and we get the Garrett Cole opt-out that we'll talk about a little bit too. You add that into the mix, and, how much do you think this changes your outlook on the competitive landscape for the AL for 2025?
I don't think a whole lot in the Astros approach. You hit on issue one. Where does Juan Soto wind up? He's obviously the best player on the board, a generational hitter, part of that crappy Yankees defense. Let's remember, the managers and coaches vote for Gold Glovers. Juan Soto was a Gold Glove finalist. So, the media doesn't know anything. They never played the game. Okay, managers and coaches, well done there on Juan Soto. But I digress. You can tilt the prism and view it in different ways. I mean, if the Yankees play competent defense and become a merely below average as opposed to worst in the league base running team, they're improved if they keep Juan Soto. And if they replace Gleyber Torres, well, that's a twofer. You're probably going to get a better defensive second baseman and certainly going to get a better base runner. Right? The Astros need to be concerned with themselves. Their view, rightfully, is that they have a core of a contending team. Can they improve enough to where they can avoid baseball Russian roulette, that 2 out of 3, where inferior teams can eliminate superior teams in a heartbeat? Of course, by the end of the season, the Astros really weren't a superior team relative to the Detroit Tigers. So I think the Astros need to tend to their own plot, clean up their own yard, rather than worrying about Yankees base running or anybody else.
I mean, defense is a big part of it for the Astros, especially with the whole Bregman thing. We don't know what's going to happen with him. And we've discussed on this podcast, defense in the infield, not that great. If you're looking at Singleton over at first base, Altuve's fallen off. He was a poor defensive player last season. We saw what happened when they tried to play some guys for Bregman. Shea Whitcomb would come in and he had some really tough games playing defense over there at third. Jeremy Pena, hey, he wasn't quite what he was a couple of years ago, but he's not going anywhere at shortstop. He's your shortstop, and he's still a good shortstop. But, then you look at Yainer Diaz behind the plate and the, Ryan Presley spiked, wild pitch that went past him that cost the Astros a big run. I don't think Diaz is going anywhere either, but certainly there's room to improve there. So I think it'll be interesting what they do in center field. If they decide between Jake Myers and Chas McCormick, maybe move one of those guys. Is Jacob Melton ready to come up in the outfield and make a difference? Kyle Tucker is going to be your right fielder, but left field, are they going to risk putting Yordan out there a lot next year after we saw him hurt himself sliding into second base? So I think there's a lot of questions Dana Brown's going to have to answer this offseason, but you make a good point, Brandon. Fundamentals, running the bases, playing good defense, that's what a lot of these championship Astros teams had, and they certainly can get better at that this offseason.
Yeah, brilliant Astros base running wasn't a hallmark with their great teams. But when your margins have shrunk, every little bit counts that much more. But the whole American League had the data on the Yankees. No one could stop them, right? They rolled through and won the pennant. They had the best offense in the league on the backs of two guys, basically, Soto and regular season Judge. If Soto leaves, that punches a massive hole in the Yankees, and they're obviously no longer the best lineup, best team in the AL, subject to how they'd replace.
One of the things that concerns me about the scouting report is how applicable that it does seem to Houston, because, and what I mean by that is what you touched on, Josh. Let me underline what you talked about with Altuve. His defensive runs saved above average over the past 3 seasons. -15, -13, -13. So, and we know, as you mentioned, first base was a defensive weak spot. Jeremy Pena is a good defensive shortstop, but did take a slight step back this year. And the defensive pillar of your infield, as you mentioned as well, is your Gold Glove winning Alex Bregman. And we don't know where his landing spot will be. If the Astros don't take steps to address these areas in the offseason, are we looking at a very similar scouting report for Houston in 2025?
Yes. Fortunately, they're not in the division with the Yankees or the Orioles. We'll see what the Blue Jays and Rays and Red Sox do in the offseason. You play the course, and unless Seattle shockingly spends big to fortify that lineup, the Astros core offensively, unless they tear it apart by trading Tucker, right? Tucker, Yordan, even starting decline, Altuve, and hopefully ready to improve Yainer Diaz. That's a very competitive foursome. Yeah, you have a lot of the rest of the lineup to worry about, but that's a core 4 that you'll stack up against most. You have the makings of a still solid starting rotation, multiple pieces in the bullpen. The framework's still there for a good club. The Astros, as we've hit upon really over the last season plus, they no longer have a great roster. They're no longer a great team. But that doesn't mean you can't get into October. And if you get into October, you have a shot at winning it all.
I think the one thing that the low-hanging fruit we can point to here is the Astros could replace a Gold Glove third baseman with a Gold Glover in Mauricio Dubon. I mean, that is an option that they have if defense is that top priority. But we all know you're missing a lot with the bat when you drop off from Bregman to Dubon, and then your utility guy, if he's having to play third base every day, maybe you don't have him to plug him in other spots. And we've seen Dubon can play the outfield for you. He can play all the infield positions as well. He's a very valuable player used in that role. But if you're deploying him at third base every day, who's going to be that other Gray Kessinger? Maybe, I guess, is who would become kind of your utility guy there. But I don't know if they can sustain a fall off at third base offensively from Bregman to Dubon. The other thing about Dubon, he doesn't really walk either. So he doesn't give you that good power, and he doesn't get on base as often as you would like.
Dubon's a bad offensive player. If the Astros go from Bregman to Dubon as the primary third baseman, then they're not serious about competing to be a great team anymore. You can compete and not get there, but if Mauricio Dubon is an everyday player, I mean, come on. And Dubon is a Gold Glover. I think he's a Gold Glover jack of many trades. The versatility where he's average to plus at all those different positions. I don't think he'd be a Gold Glove third baseman. I don't think he'd be a Gold Glove shortstop. I don't think he'd be a Gold Glove center fielder. Good at all those. He is what he is, an outstanding utility player.
Let's move on to an eyebrow-raising Astros free agency prediction. But before we do that, just a reminder, if you're a Texans fan, the three of us do a Texans podcast called Texans on Tap. We're live after every game. You can find that over on our other YouTube channel, Sports Map Texans, or in audio form on all your favorite podcast apps. Just search Texans on Tap. We'll be dropping a Lions-Texans preview this Thursday. And now that the guys have taken a sip of their liquids, I want to get your reaction to Jim Bowden's free agency predictions. Bowden's a former MLB front office exec for the Reds and Nationals. He is now an analyst who writes for The Athletic. In Friday's column, he made 25 offseason predictions. Number 5 was that the Astros sign center fielder Cody Bellinger after he opts out of his Cubs deal to a 4-year, $112 million deal. If that wasn't big enough of a splash, the Astros also re-sign Alex Bregman to a 7-year, $185.5 million deal. Now, obviously, that first part was a whiff on the Bellinger situation as he exercised his option with the Cubs. So that just leaves Bregman. We've talked at length about how we do not see the Astros committing 7 years to Bregman, but how close do you think Bowden's number is on Breggy?
Jim Bowden needed a saliva test after suggesting the Astros would sign Cody Bellinger to 4 years, 112. We'll do the math. That's $28 million per season. Bellinger was a mediocrity in 2024 after a phenomenal 2023. Now, I wasn't spooked at all. But, Bellinger said mean things about the Astros. He's an ex-Dodger. We can't sign him. Grow up, kiddies. If you'd make your team better as an outfielder and as a first base option. But $28 million per year, I mean, Jim Bowden's aware of the tax situation, right? So he was going to give Bellinger $28 million a year, Bregman $26 million plus. Yeah, Jim Crane is going to knock on the door of a $300 million payroll with you, unless he meant they were going to trade Fromber and Tucker. Hey, maybe shop Yordan too while you're at it. So I enjoy a lot of Jim Bowden's stuff, but that was preposterous. On Bregman, it sounds ballpark. I will say that the idea that a long line of teams are going to be tripping over one another to throw 7 years, $190 million at Alex Bregman is mythology. He's a good player. It's a lousy third base free agent market. Timing isn't everything in life, but it darn sure matters. But Bregman's not a superstar, has not been for 5 years. He's coming off his worst full season of a career. That season turned 31 years old, the third day of the 2025 season. And who are all these teams? The Arizona Diamondbacks over the weekend picked up the option on Eugenio Suarez. That's one possible suitor off the board. Let me just rip through the American League quickly. American League. Now, the Yankees lose Soto and don't try to re-sign Gleyber Torres. The Yankees loom as a clear and present danger. They could move Jazz Chisholm to second base, Bregman at third. The Red Sox, no interest. The Orioles, no interest. The Rays, no interest. The Blue Jays are a sleeper, but if Bregman's all about winning, is he really going to go to Toronto? American League Central, Cleveland, no interest. Kansas City, no interest. Minnesota, no interest. Chicago White Sox, come on. That leaves Detroit. Would the Tigers be willing to spend big? Hinch, Bregman, veteran leadership added to that club. Well, one of the Tigers' top 3 prospects is a third baseman, Jace Young. Are you going to block him to give Bregman $27 million per year when he's 36, 37 years old? And then in the American League West, the Rangers, no interest. The Mariners don't seem of a mind to put that kind of cash on the table, though they'd make perfect sense. The Angels, the A's. So what is that? Maybe 3 teams in the American League in the Bregman bidding? Now, granted, it only takes one, but if Scott Boras is positioning this as he's a generational third baseman on a Hall of Fame path, 10 years, $300 million, does the market grow soft enough that the Astros consider, well, we'll go to 6, 150, $25 million per year, no state income tax if you love it here. And where's Bregman on all this? Would he be, you pay the going rate because I'm worth it all I've meant to you. I can handle the taxes in New York or another market. It's going to be fascinating. Along with that, the timeline. Is this done in 10 days because Bregman says, let's get it done? Or is this a Scott Boras play that could drag through the winter into the early spring?
Which could certainly happen. We know what's gone down with a lot of Boras's clients the last year or so. So who knows? But I think it's also an assumption that Jim Crane's going to go over the tax threshold again that Bowden's putting out there. I don't know if I really buy it. And if they do spend all that money on Bregman, that pretty much means Tucker's a goner, right? He might be anyway, but I don't see him signing both of those guys. And then you got Fromber coming up after that year too. I think they're just going to have to pick, and probably now, this offseason, pick who you want to go with long term. If it's Tucker, if it's Fromber, if it's Bregman, obviously Tucker would be the guy that I'd try and keep around. But they're not going to be able to do it all. And to get more salary cap flexibility, I think trading somebody like Fromber would make a lot of sense. We've talked about this on the channel before. I think Dana Brown really needs to think about what does this look like over the next several years? What move puts us in the best position to extend this window and keep winning? Because you can't keep everybody, and the Astros have shown they have no problem with letting guys walk when their contracts are up.
Tucker over Bregman is a very easy decision, but it's not a unilateral Astros decision, right? What is Kyle Tucker's tenor in all this? They've obviously gotten nowhere close to this point in extension talks to aggressively re-pursue those. If you're the Astros, does it take Bregman leaving and you're taking role of, well, who are going to be average or above offensive players in 2025 and beyond for this ball club?
It was interesting because, during, a lot of these negotiations, like Correa, where they've said, we don't want to negotiate during the season. We want to wait until afterwards, where it seemed like Bregman was a little bit more open to that. I think Bregman was willing to negotiate during the season, and we didn't really see any movement on that front. Now, Bregman's one of 4 Astros up for Silver Slugger Awards, which gets announced next Tuesday. The other finalists are Altuve, Yordan, and Yiner. Tucker would have probably been in the mix as well had he been healthy. Do you think this offensive depth makes it more likely that the Astros don't go throwing around big money for a big bat?
The Astros can viably say that within the American League West, which they won with a half season of Kyle Tucker, Bregman and Altuve in their 30s, Altuve 35 in May. I mean, there's certainly not going to be a major growth in Altuve's skill level going forward. Already highlighted, the defense has been in pretty steep decline by every metric over a 3-year period now. Bregman, on one hand, you'd think could have some bounce back up off the worst full season of his career. That walk ratio plummeted. His on-base percentage, 37 points lower than any season of his career except for his rookie season. Right, this slugging percentage was in the low 4s. Can he get back to being an 800 OPS guy, which is very good? Again, not superstar stuff, but Bregman over the last 5 seasons, is a 261 hitter with a 795 OPS. That's good, but I'm not saying, oh no, I better give him $27 million per year for 7 years. But what are your alternatives? And just to amplify on the Bregman market, if the Astros are going to keep tabs on this, or, well, the free agent flag is dropped and we don't intend to seriously bid. Two other possibilities on Bregman. The third base market, in free agency, there's not much out there. But what if a team says, we trade our third baseman because we can get a couple of real quality assets or move that money toward another position or pitching or whatever, and that would open up third base for Alex Bregman as a free agent possibility. And I don't know if Scott Boras was reading the tea leaves that, there aren't 12 teams out there thinking, we want Alex Bregman. I covered the American League. The National League, there's hardly any who are going to have any interest in Alex Bregman. If the Mets lose Pete Alonso and move Mark Vientos to first base, thing is, it's the right teams who might have interest in Bregman, right? If it's the Mets and the Yankees. But those are hypothetical. The Washington Nationals are the only other team in the National League that I could see with their current roster or payroll issues saying, okay, we have interest in Alex Bregman. Boris mentioned, Bregman could move to second base, if not immediately, right? Fresh off winning a Gold Glove, it wouldn't seem a logical move. But if you are, say, the Phillies, and you have Alec Boehm as your third baseman, and you're not moving him to second base, 6'5" guy, lanky, but you'd like to add Bregman, and Boris has done multiple deals with the Phillies, and Bregman would say, oh yeah, if the money's right, I'll happily move to second base. Carlos Correa has expressed willingness to move to third in the right spot. A-Rod had to move to third way back when because he wasn't supplanting Derek Jeter, even though Alex Rodriguez is a much better defensive shortstop than Derek Jeter. What will Alex Bregman prioritize? I'll say in addition to money, because the money always matters. But what is his number one? Because he's going to get, another 100 million plus as his floor, right? 150 million maybe as his floor. Well, would you take 25 million less to go to a clearly better franchise where you'd expect to be in the playoffs the majority of the years of the contract, as opposed to Toronto? Or if the Angels came in with 32 million per year and no one else is offering 27, it'll all play out.
If I'm Jim Crane, I'm looking at these Silver Slugger Award finalists and I'm thinking, Astros would have had 5 if Tucker would have stayed healthy. Dodgers, we saw what they did and how they blew it out with their payroll, spending all the money, deferring all this money, just crazy amount of cash flowing. They had 5 finalists. So if I'm Jim Crane looking at that going, man, how are we that far off from the Dodgers when it comes to this? They have 5, we have 5. Now, to be fair, Bregman might be leaving. So then you don't have 5, you have 4. But if you're just kind of, looking at the big picture, you're thinking we have enough quality hitters here to compete with the best of the best. Well, why do I need to go out and add all these extra guys? And if Bregman falls off, well, Tucker's probably going to be in the finalists this upcoming year if he stays healthy. So we will at least probably have 4. So if I'm Jim Crane, I'm thinking we just need to coach this up better. We need to fill in the margins better. We have a lot of marquee hitters here. And I mean, think of what, Yainer Diaz could be in the next few years if he continues to improve. I know he took a little bit of dip this past year, but what if he takes another big leap? This is still a young guy with a lot of potential, a lot of talent. So yeah, if Dana Brown's coming to me asking for all this money, I'm kind of pointing over at the Dodgers and being like, we're pretty similar to them. We've done better contracts. So I don't know if I'd be so quick to pull the trigger on spending a lot of money this offseason.
We touched on Garrett Cole a little earlier. I want to dig more into that situation and if there are any Astros implications. But first, we are excited to invite everyone out to a really cool event happening next Monday, November 11th, called The Tailgate. It's a celebration of food, sports, and fandom. This is our 3rd time doing this, our 3rd year doing this, and it just gets better every year. There's going to be all kinds of tailgate-inspired bites and cocktails from places like Big City Wings, Loro, Bizarro's Pizza, Uchi, and so many others. The same ticket that gets you in the door includes your food and drinks. There will be fun game day activities. VIP tickets include meet and greets with Houston Texans legends Brian Cushing, Travis Johnson. Again, it is at 8th Wonder Brewery on Monday, November 11th. Tickets are on sale now, so go check out the website for details. If you love sports and food like we do, go to tailgate.culturemap.com and use promo code SPORTSMAP to get $10 off your tickets. We hope to see you there. That's it for part 1 of Stone Cold Stros. We'll have another video dropping on Wednesday, so keep an eye out for that. And until then, go Stros.